It was 2:14 in the morning. Some call it the witching hour, but I call it the hour when truths emerge. The red digits on my digital clock glowed like a pair of eyes in the darkness. People say sleep eludes you as you grow older, but this was no ordinary sleepless night. Inside me, that familiar icy feeling that my life was about to change. Sleep is a capricious friend who visits briefly, leaving you staring at the ceiling, listening to the silence of the house. My doctor, Dr. Henderson, the young man who took over Dr. Henderson's practice, calls it age-related insomnia. He prescribes some pills, but I don't like taking them. They make my head feel foggy in the mornings, like it's stuffed with cotton, when I need my mind to be clear. Especially now. My joints ached, and my left knee always had a twinge that predicted rain better than any weather forecaster on TV. I rolled over in bed and pulled the heavy quilt up to my chin. This quilt, made by my mother when I got married in 1975, is hand-stitched with a double wedding ring pattern. They don't make things like this anymore. Nowadays, everything is bought from factories, made from cheap synthetic fabric that falls apart after 2 washes. But this quilt even survived Harold's death. Still in perfect condition. Just like this family used to be. The current generation doesn't know. We used to repair things when they broke, we didn't throw them away. I'm sure I'm not the only one listening who misses those days when things, words, and promises lasted a lifetime. I needed a glass of water. My throat was as dry as sandpaper. I thought about getting up. The floorboards in the hallway outside my room still creak in the exact same spot, no matter how many times Harold tried to fix them. 30 years and nothing's changed. He always called it our burglar alarm. If someone sneaks in, Margaret, he'd say, that floorboard will chirp like a canary. I miss those jokes. Honestly, I even miss his snoring. Used to rattle the windows and I'd grumble about it. Funny how, when you have someone, the noise drives you crazy. But when you're alone, you realize you need it. This house feels way too big now. The silence gets so thick sometimes it actually makes my ears ring. Not that it's just me here anymore. Michael and Victoria, my son and his wife, moved in 6 months ago. More accurately, I had insisted they move in. Because Michael, my strong football-playing mountain-climbing Michael, was getting weaker. I dangled my legs over the edge of the bed and groaned softly when my feet touched the cold parquet. I picked up my pink terrycloth bathrobe, which had seen better days, and tightened the belt. I didn't turn on the light. I know every inch of this house, even in the dark. I walked through the room in my memory, my hand touching the dresser where the photos from Michael's graduation, his wedding, and Harold's retirement party stood in their silver frames. I slowly opened my bedroom door, trying to be quiet. I didn't want to wake them. They were in the guest room at the end of the hallway, the one with the beautiful bay window overlooking the garden. At least I thought they were both there. I stepped into the hallway. Moonlight seeped in through the window in the stairwell, casting long pale shadows on the floor. Everything was peaceful, quiet, and then I saw it. Movement. At the far end of the hallway. I froze. My heart pounded painfully in my chest, a feeling I hadn't felt since nearly hitting a deer on the highway in 1998. I leaned against the wall into the shadows. It wasn't a burglar. I wish it had been a burglar. What I saw was far more dangerous. It was Victoria, my daughter-in-law, standing there in her silk nightgown, glistening in the moonlight, like a cold statue that didn't belong in this warm family home. She wasn't going to get a drink. She wasn't going to the bathroom. Her target was clear. She was in front of Michael's room, her own husband's room. Victoria scanned the hallway, looking left and right. There was no worry on her face. I recognized that expression. It was the calm expression of someone approaching their prey. She looked toward where I was hiding in the shadows, and for a terrifying second I thought she saw me. But her eyes didn't see me. She reached for the doorknob. She turned it so slowly and carefully that it made no sound. Not a click. Not a creak. She slipped into Michael's room and shut the door behind her. Just like that, she disappeared into the shadows. I stood there, feet numb against the cold floor. He turned the doorknob. So slowly. Tell me, why sneak into your own husband's room like a thief? Why not just knock? Right then, every instinct I had as a mother screamed at me. Not to run but to fight. What else would you think? The look on his face stuck with me. So focused, so intense, almost like a predator sizing up its prey. My mind drifted back to the start of all this. The nightmare had its roots at Thanksgiving just 6 months ago. Feels like ages have passed since then. Before that holiday, Michael was unstoppable. Partner at an architecture firm, working endless hours, still finding time to coach Little League on weekends. His laugh filled whatever space he was in, big and warm, the kind that made you want to laugh too. But that Thanksgiving, the second he slid his plate away, the whole table went silent. He didn't even touch the pecan pie he had loved for 35 years. A mother never forgets the moment her child leaves food on their plate, because that moment is when not just the appetite but life itself is cut short. "I'm not just hungry, Mom," he said, rubbing his stomach. "I feel a little nauseous." I remember looking at him then. Really looking at him. His skin was a grayish color like old newspaper. Under his eyes were dark circles that I thought were from work stress. "You're working too hard," I scolded him gently. "You need to take vitamins." If only it were that simple. Over the next few weeks, the nausea turned into vomiting. The fatigue turned into such severe exhaustion that she couldn't climb the stairs without stopping to catch her breath. She lost 10 pounds. Then 20. Then 30. We went to the doctor. God, we went to the doctor. In my day you had one doctor. He knew your name, your family name, listened to your chest with a cold stethoscope and told you what was wrong. Hospitals today are not places of healing. They are factories. We waited for hours in those cold, fluorescent-lit rooms. The doctors, those doctors, they looked at computer screens more than they looked at my son's face. Human warmth had been replaced by cold machines and test results. They did blood tests. They did an MRI. They put him in a huge ring-shaped machine that made loud banging noises. I sat in the waiting room, clutching my rosary beads, praying to St. Jude, patron saint of lost causes. "It's a viral disease," said one doctor. "It's an autoimmune disease," said another. Worst of all was that young psychiatrist Victoria forced us to see. He looked me in the eye and said smugly, "It's psychosomatic, Mom. Michael is making himself sick with stress." So he was telling me my son was killing himself, melting away from stress? I looked at that doctor, a man young enough to be my grandson, and wanted to shake him. "My son is a fighter," I told him, my voice trembling with a rare anger. He played college football with broken ribs because he didn't want to let his team down. He's not imagining this. But they didn't listen. They never listened to old women. To them, we're invisible. We're just background noise. "Mrs. Anderson," they say with that condescending smile, "medicine has advanced so much since your time. Let us handle this." And then there was Victoria. She was perfect in every way. Or so it seemed. When Michael first brought her home 3 years ago, I was impressed. She was beautiful, confident, soft-spoken. She worked as a nutritionist, which I thought was wonderful. "She'll take good care of him," I said that night to Harold's picture. "She knows about health." She brought me flowers. She complimented my cooking. She wanted to see Michael's baby pictures. She did everything a prospective bride should do. But sometimes I caught her examining the house, assessing it, calculating its square footage. He was checking the hallmarks on the silverware. It was very subtle. A glance here, a touch there. But I noticed everything. That's what mothers do. When Michael got sick, he jumped right in. "I'll handle his diet, Mom," he told me. "I'll keep track of his meds. I know what supplements will help his immune system." He filled the kitchen with bottles, herbs, vitamins, powders I'd never even heard of. He whipped up these thick green smoothies that smelled like fresh-cut grass. "Drink up, sweetheart," he'd say, holding the glass to Michael's lips when his hands shook too much. "This'll make you strong." But Michael didn't get stronger. He just faded more each day. And as he got weaker, he shut me out even more. "You go rest, Margaret," he'd insist, steering me out of the kitchen. "You've already raised him. Let me take it from here. You're not old enough to fuss about his medicine schedule." I was old. He said it with a smile, but it felt like a slap. He started listening to his phone calls. "She's resting," he would tell his friends. "Too tired to talk," he would tell his business associates. He built a brick wall around him, and I was left outside scraping at the mortar. I stood in the hallway looking at Michael's closed door. 5 minutes had passed. My knees were starting to burn from standing motionless on the hard floor. What was he doing in there? Was he checking if she was breathing? Was he giving her water? If he was just watching her, why was it so secretive? Why was it so mysterious? I thought of my own mother. In 1975, my father started acting strangely. He was forgetting things. He would get angry for no reason. The doctors said it was just aging. They said he was senile, a word they used for everything back then. But my mother, she knew. Dr. Henderson looked into her father's eyes and said, "The problem isn't in his mind. It's in his blood." Everyone told her she was hysterical, a paranoid housewife. But she insisted. She ran every test they could think of. In the end, it was a slow carbon monoxide leak in his workshop, the place he loved, the place that almost killed him. He'd been poisoning himself day after day just by doing what he enjoyed. While everyone else trusted what the book said, she went with her gut. That's what saved him. Now I knew exactly how she felt. My stomach was tight. Cold crept up my neck and made the hair stand on end. Maybe it's something ancient buried deep, the kind of instinct that kept mothers awake when something dangerous was lurking outside. 10 minutes ticked by. The doorknob moved again. It turned so slowly I thought time itself might break. I pressed myself into the shadows, peeking through a crack. Victoria stepped out. She closed the door behind her, careful, almost clinical. When she turned, the moon caught her face. She was smiling, but it was all wrong. Not warm. Not the kind of smile you'd expect from a wife watching over her sick husband. It was a small, tense, satisfied smile. Like a cat that had swallowed a canary and gotten away with it. She smoothed her silk nightgown, took a deep breath and walked toward her room. Her steps were light, almost skipping. She didn't look tired. She looked energetic. I waited until I heard the bedroom door close. Then I let out the breath I was holding. My hands were shaking. Not from the cold but from fear. And anger. A hot, boiling anger that started in my stomach and spread to my chest. I went back to my room and sat on the edge of the bed. I didn't drink the water. I couldn't swallow the lump in my throat. I looked at the clock. It was 2:32 a.m. "You're crazy, Margaret," I whispered to the empty room. "You're a senile woman who watches too many crime shows on that research channel. She's his wife. He loves her. For God's sake, he's a nutritionist. He's trying to help her." But the other voice, my mother's voice, whispered louder. Why did he sneak in? Why was he smiling? Why was he dying as he grew stronger? Yesterday I thought about Michael's face. His cheekbones protruded like razors beneath his skin. His eyes, once blue and bright, were dull and yellowed. He looked like a ghost wandering his own body. "Mom," he whispered, holding my hand with a shockingly weak grip. "I'm so tired. It's like I'm disappearing." "I know, baby," I said, trying to hold back my tears. "We'll find out what's wrong. Victoria just says I need to rest," he murmured, closing his eyes. "She says it will take time for the new supplements to work." Supplements. I lay back on my pillow, but my eyes stayed open. I watched the ceiling fan tracing its blades in the dark. Round and round. Just like my thoughts. If I told Michael, he wouldn't believe me. He adores Victoria, worships her. He'd think his mother was losing her mind. Jealous of the young woman. "Mom, stop it," he'd say. "Victoria is saving my life." If I told the doctors, they'd write dementia next to arthritis and insomnia in my file. If I told the police, what would I say? "Officer, my daughter-in-law went into a room." They'd laugh me out of the station. I needed proof. Real proof. Not an old woman's intuition. Not feelings. I needed something indisputable. Something that could stand up to his sweet talk, his medical degrees, and his perfect appearance. But how? I'm not a spy. I'm a retired school librarian. I don't know how to hack phones. I barely know how to use FaceTime on the iPad my granddaughter gave me for Christmas, and even then I usually end up staring at my own forehead halfway through the call. Technology confuses me. Changes too fast. Every week there's a new update, a new password, a new way to feel stupid. But as the gray light began to seep through my blinds, signaling the arrival of another scary new day, I realized something. I didn't have to be a genius. I didn't need to be young. I just needed to be a mother. Love is a powerful teacher. When Michael was 6, he wanted a special costume for the school play. A robot. We couldn't afford costumes from the store. So I learned to work with cardboard, silver spray paint, and duct tape. I stayed up 3 nights, figuring out the mechanics of the arms. I made the costume, because he needed it. Now he needs his life saved. I heard footsteps upstairs. The house was waking up. The smell of coffee began to waft. From the kitchen, Victoria was already awake, playing the role of the faithful wife. The clatter of spoons, the hum of the blender preparing green sludge could be heard. I sat down. My bones creaked in response to my movement. My back was stiff. My eyes burned from lack of sleep. I felt every one of my 68 years. But when I picked up my glasses from the nightstand and put them on, seeing the world clearly, I felt a steel-like resolve in my chest. I wasn't just Margaret the widow. I wasn't just an old woman with aching knees. I was the woman who bore that child. I was the woman who sat at his bedside when he had chickenpox, cooling his fever with wet cloths. I was the woman who fought the school administration when they wanted to place him in the wrong class. I walked to the window and looked out at the garden Harold had planted. The roses were blooming, vibrant and red. Even if I have to learn to fly a spaceship, I don't care, I whispered to the glass. I'll find out what you're doing in that room, Victoria. I dressed slowly. Comfortable pants, orthopedic shoes, a simple blouse. I combed my gray hair and pulled it back. I looked in the mirror. An old woman stood before me. The wrinkles on my face were like the marks of a long and difficult journey. But my eyes were clear. I went downstairs. Victoria was in the kitchen, pouring a green smoothie into a tall glass. She looked fresh, rested, and beautiful. "Good morning, Margaret," she chirped. "Did you sleep well?" I looked at her hands. Those manicured, delicate hands, the hands that prepared my son's meals. "Like a baby," I lied. My voice was calm. "And you?" "Oh, great," she said, turning her back to me to slice the lemon. "I slept all night. Not once did I wake up." The lie hung between us, invisible and poisonous. "That's good," I said, moving toward the coffee machine. "Rest is important." I took a sip of bitter coffee. I watched her carry the tray upstairs to Michael. Savor the secret, Victoria, I thought. Because this secret wouldn't remain a secret for long. I finished my coffee, washed the cup, and put it in the dishwasher. I grabbed my bag. My big leather bag that could hold everything from handkerchiefs to hard candies. "Where are you going so early?" Victoria asked from the top of the stairs. "I'm going to the pharmacy," I replied. "I need to refill my arthritis medication." It wasn't entirely a lie. I was going to a store. But not to buy medicine. I was going to buy an eye. An electronic eye that wouldn't blink, wouldn't sleep, and wouldn't ignore a paranoid old woman. I opened the front door and stepped out into the morning air. The air was cold but felt good. It felt like the beginning of a battle. And for the first time in 6 months, I didn't feel helpless. I felt dangerous. When I parked my car in the parking lot of that huge shopping mall, my hands were still shaking on the steering wheel. The neon blue sign of the electronics store buzzed overhead. Going inside felt like entering a battlefield for my generation. These stores were labyrinths. Flashing lights, blaring music, and thousands of cables I could never understand the purpose of. The moment I stepped through the door, a coolness washed over me. The air conditioning was on full blast. I felt lost among the shelves. Young people were rushing around with the latest phones in their hands, standing mesmerized in front of giant screen televisions. Me though, I was just a 68-year-old mother trying to save my son, and I didn't even know exactly what I was looking for. "Can I help you, ma'am?" I turned around. There stood a teenager, probably in high school, wearing a blue t-shirt, his face covered in acne. His name tag read Jason. He had a strange black hoop earring in his ear, but his smile was gentle. "Yes, Jason," I said, trying not to let my voice tremble. "I'm looking for a camera." "What kind of filming for?" he asked eagerly. "Vlogging? Nature photography?" Or for your grandchildren. I swallowed. The face of my granddaughter Emma came to mind. I was doing this for them, but I couldn't tell this kid that. For security, I said in a near whisper. I looked around, feeling as if Victoria might emerge from behind a shelf and watch me. I want to monitor a room in my house, but the camera mustn't be visible. Jason's professional smile faltered for a moment. He understood. There was usually only one reason older women came to this store asking for an invisible camera. They suspected their nanny. Follow me, he said, lowering his voice. He led me to the back of the store, to a dimly lit corner. On the shelves were teddy bears, digital clocks, even smoke detectors. But they were all actually eyes. We call these nanny cams, Jason said, picking up a box. It looks like a digital clock, but it has a high-resolution lens inside. It also has night vision. I took the box in my hands. Night vision? Yes, sir. You can see everything clearly even in pitch darkness. It was just what I needed. But then a scary question popped into my head. How do I watch this? Where do I plug the cables in? Jason smiled. No cables. It works with Wi-Fi. It sends the image directly to your smartphone. My phone. That damn thing in my bag. That touchscreen monster my granddaughter forced me to buy, which I only use to check the weather and occasionally call someone by mistake. To the phone. I said anxiously. I don't really understand that stuff, son. It's very simple, Jason said patiently. You download an app, enter the password. Done. I can help you at the register. I took the digital watch-looking camera and a memory card because Jason mentioned something called the cloud. But since I couldn't figure out how the image would get to the clouds in the sky, I decided a tangible card was safer. When I got home, my heart was pounding. Victoria was in the kitchen, preparing one of those green, fragrant concoctions again. Where were you, Margaret? She asked without turning around. Her voice was soft but had a judge-like tone to it. I got my medicine, I said, shoving the electronics store bag into the depths of my large bag. The line was very long. I hurried upstairs to Michael's room. I only had a few minutes while Victoria was downstairs running the blender. When I entered the room, that heavy, sickly smell hit me. Michael was asleep. He had grown so thin that he was almost lost under the blanket. His breathing was wheezy. The orange prescription pill bottles on the nightstand stood in a row like soldiers. I opened the box. My hands were shaking so much I almost dropped it. My arthritic fingers struggled with those tiny buttons. Downloading the app Jason mentioned, entering the passwords on that tiny screen, took forever. To find the Wi-Fi password, I had to read the faded label stuck under the modem in the study. I put on my glasses and looked through a magnifying glass. It took me 5 minutes to figure out if it was a B or an 8. Finally, I succeeded. I saw Michael's room on my phone screen. Black and white, a bit grainy but clear. I placed the camera, that digital clock, on the nightstand, facing the medicine bottles. I hid the old clock in a drawer. Please, I prayed silently. Please work. I was drenched in sweat by the time I went downstairs. The first night was torture. I lay in bed staring at my phone's bright screen. My eyes were burning. 1 a.m., 2 a.m., 3 a.m. There was no movement on the screen. Just Michael's slight movements under the covers. The silence of the room, combined with the screen's faint blue light, was hypnotic. Maybe I'm going crazy, I said to myself. Maybe Victoria really did just come in to give him water. Maybe old age had turned me into a paranoid witch. The second night was the same. Nothing happened. Just Michael's wheezing breaths and my growing sense of guilt. I was spying on my own daughter-in-law. Was this befitting of a Christian woman? How would I look the priest in the face at Sunday Mass? But then the third night came. It was exactly 1:58 a.m. I kept my phone plugged, and so it wouldn't run out of battery. My eyelids were heavy. I was about to succumb to sleep when I saw the door handle move on the screen. My heart nearly stopped. I held my breath. I gripped the phone tightly with both hands. The door opened. Victoria slipped inside. Again in that silk nightgown. Again with those silent steps. Thanks to the camera's night vision, her face was ghostly pale but clear. She walked straight to the nightstand where the clock was. She glanced at the camera for a moment. My blood ran cold. I thought she saw me. I thought she sensed me watching her behind that black plastic eye. But she shifted her gaze. She wasn't looking at the clock, but at the orange medicine bottles next to it. She picked up the bottle containing Michael's strongest painkillers. She opened the cap. "What are you doing?" I whispered at the screen. She poured the pills from the bottle into her palm. Then he put them in his pocket. I was in shock. Was he stealing his medication? Was he addicted? Was he using my husband's medication for himself? But no. He didn't stop. He took a small sealed bag out of the other pocket of his nightgown. From inside, pills that looked exactly like Michael's, the same size, the same color. And he poured them into the empty orange bottle. He closed the cap. He put the bottle back in its place. He adjusted it with millimeter precision, so the label was facing forward. Then he leaned over Michael. He placed his hand on his forehead. It wasn't a tender touch. He wasn't checking his temperature. He wasn't checking his pulse. It was as if he was checking the consistency of a dish cooking on the stove. That smile on his face, the smile I saw in the hallway that night, came back. He left the room. The phone slipped from my hand and fell onto the bed. The bile in my stomach rose to my mouth. I ran to the bathroom and vomited. I was shaking. This wasn't theft. This wasn't addiction. This was murder. Slow, deliberate, cold-blooded murder. That night, morning never came. I watched that video over and over until the sun rose. Each time I watched it, the image of Victoria switching those pills stuck in my mind like a splinter. What were those pills? Poison? Arsenic? Or just harmless sugar pills? When morning came, I had to act before Victoria woke up, before the sun was even at its peak. I quietly entered Michael's room. He was asleep. My poor son. He slept unaware that the lips kissing him were actually those of his executioner. I took the orange bottle from the nightstand. I took only one pill from it and wrapped it in my handkerchief. I put the bottle back. He couldn't notice. I went downstairs. I grabbed my car keys. Going for a walk. I wrote on a note left on the kitchen table. "I'll be back early." I had to go to Dr. Miller. Robert Miller. He was my husband's college friend, now running the city's largest private lab. He was about to retire, but he wouldn't refuse me. I could trust him. Old friends, old acquaintances don't betray each other. Those 3 hours in the laboratory's waiting room were the longest 3 hours of my life. I tried to read the magazines, but the letters danced before my eyes. Every tick of the clock on the wall felt like a hammer blow to my brain. Finally, Robert appeared at the door. His face was as white as a sheet. He was holding a piece of paper. He had pushed his glasses down to the tip of his nose and was looking at me with disbelieving eyes. "Margaret," he said, his voice trembling. He invited me into his office. He closed the door. "Where did you get this pill?" he asked. "Michael's medicine," I said. "His painkiller." Robert shook his head. "No, Margaret. This isn't a painkiller. The outer coating is professionally done, yes. It looks like it came from a pharmacy. But inside..." He took a deep breath. "Inside, it's filled with a mixture of thallium and antifreeze. A very low dose. It won't kill. Not immediately. But it will slowly destroy the kidneys. It will melt the liver. And worst of all, doctors will mistake the symptoms for normal organ failure or a virus. Thallium. Rat poison. She was giving my son rat poison." Tears began to stream from my eyes. I didn't want to cry, but I couldn't help it. "Robert," I said, sobbing. The one who did this was his wife." Robert reached for the phone on the table. "We have to call the police, Margaret." I put my hand on the phone. "No," I said. The coldness in my voice surprised even me. I wiped my tears. In that moment, the sadness inside me evaporated and was replaced by pure, burning hatred. "The police will come, Robert. But not now. There's something else I need to know first." I stood up. I slung my bag over my shoulder. "Where are you going?" Robert asked anxiously. "To chase a ghost," I said. Because Robert, if a woman poisons her husband so professionally, it's not her first time. I left the lab. I got in my car. Victoria wanted to play this game. Okay. But there was one thing she forgot. I'd been playing this game much longer than her. The game of survival. And now it was my turn. When I pulled out of the lab parking lot, my car's AC blew cold air on my face, but I was still burning up. The rage inside me was boiling the blood in my veins. In my bag was the lab report for the poison pill used to kill my son. This piece of paper wasn't just a chemical analysis. It was Victoria's death warrant. But Robert was right. Going to the police with just this report was risky. Victoria was smart. She could say, I didn't do it. She could say, Michael must have taken it himself. Maybe he was suicidal. With her sweet tongue, her innocent face, she could fool the jury. She could say I was an old senile woman, that I blamed my daughter-in-law for my son's illness. No, I needed more. I needed a pattern, a habit, an undeniable past. Because if a woman could put rat poison in her husband's food and call him darling in the morning, this wasn't her first rodeo. I opened my phone book. My fingers went to the letter F. Frank. Frank Russo. He was my husband Harold's friend from the Korean War. An old-timer who'd worked in the police force for years and started private detective work after retiring. His son mostly ran the business now, but I knew Frank would make an exception for me. In our generation, friendship wasn't something that ended with a phone call. It was a lifetime commitment. He picked up on the second ring. His voice was thick with years of cigarette smoke and whiskey, gravelly like pebbles. Margaret, he said, surprised. My God, it's so good to hear your voice. Is it Harold's anniversary coming up? No, Frank, I said, trying to suppress the tremor in my voice. I'm in trouble. Or rather, Michael is in trouble. I need your old nose, Frank. There's a situation that needs sniffing out. Half an hour later, we met at that old chrome-plated American diner on the edge of town, Jerry's Diner. It hadn't changed since the 1960s. Red vinyl seats, little jukeboxes on the tables, and the smell of fried onions hanging in the air felt safe to me. It was a real place, far from the falseness of the modern world. Frank sat across from me. He had aged. His hair was thinning, his face was wrinkled like a road map, but his eyes were still sharp. He listened to me as he added sugar to his filter coffee. He didn't interrupt. He didn't ask any questions. He just frowned a little more as I talked. I placed the lab report on the table, next to the ketchup bottle. Thallium, said Frank, reading the report. He whistled. Soviet style. Or old-fashioned treasure hunter style. This isn't easy to find, Margaret. You can't just go to the pharmacy and buy it like aspirin. I want you to find it, Frank, I said. I held his hand. His hands were calloused and warm. Victoria, my daughter-in-law. Who is this woman? Where did she come from? She told us her family was dead, that she was an only child. But I don't even believe her good morning anymore. Frank nodded. He took a small spiral notebook out of his coat pocket. What's her maiden name? Miller, I said. Victoria Miller. She said she was from Texas. Frank took note. Give me 24 hours, Margaret. Nobody can hide in this day and age. Especially those who leave bodies behind. It was late afternoon when I returned home. Entering that house was like entering a graveyard. Everything looked normal, but the smell of death permeated the walls. Victoria was sitting in the living room reading a fashion magazine. She looked up when she saw me. Ah, Margaret, you're here. Your walk took a long time. I looked at her smooth skin, her fake worried eyes. I wanted to scratch her face with my nails and scream, "You're killing my son, you witch." But I didn't. My mother had taught me that patience was a virtue, and revenge was a dish best served cold. Yes, I said, my voice sounding tired. I ran into an old friend. We chatted a bit. How nice, she said, smiling. I gave Michael his evening soup. He seems a little better today. A lie. A blatant lie. I went upstairs. Michael was sleeping. His color had grown even more sallow. His breathing was shallow. I sat on the edge of his bed and held his hand. It was ice cold. Hang in there. Son, I whispered. Hang in there. The cavalry is on its way. Frank called around noon the next day. His voice sounded different this time. That old cheerful tone was gone, replaced by a professional, cold, metallic tone. Margaret, he said, you need to come to my office immediately. This isn't something we can discuss over the phone. Frank's office was on the second floor of an old brick building in the city center. Inside, it smelled of dusty file papers and stale coffee. Frank was sitting behind his desk. A thick yellow file sat in front of him. He didn't stand up when I entered. What I saw in his eyes as he looked at me was pain. Pain for me. Sit down, Margaret, he said. I sat down. I held my purse tightly in my lap. What did you find, Frank? She's not from Texas. Frank opened the file. Black and white photocopied photos fell out. Her name isn't Victoria Miller, Frank said. He pushed a photo toward me. It was Victoria, but her hair was black and she was a little heavier. Next to her was a stocky, smiling man. Here her name is Vanessa Thorne. Location, Ohio. Year 2013. I looked at the man in the photo. Who's this? Gary Thorne, said Frank. Her first husband. He was a car mechanic. He had his own shop. Business was good. What happened to him? Heart attack, said Frank. He was 42. He was as fit as a fiddle. The doctors said sudden cardiac arrest. No autopsy was performed because his wife, our Victoria, refused it for religious reasons. 3 months before Gary died, his wife took out a $500,000 life insurance policy on him. My stomach clenched. $500,000. There's more, said Frank. He pulled out another photo. This time Victoria was blonde. Next to her was a wealthy-looking older man with sunburned skin. This is Richard Vance. Location, Florida. Year 2018. Her name this time was Veronica Vance. Richard was a real estate tycoon. He was 55 years old. What happened to him? I asked, horrified to know the answer. A rare blood disease, said Frank. The doctors couldn't diagnose it. The poor guy slowly wasted away. His kidneys failed. Just like Michael. When Richard died, Victoria or Veronica inherited $1.2 million and a $2 million life insurance policy. My head was spinning. This woman was a black widow. A professional killer. She traveled from city to city, choosing her victims, exploiting them until they were drained dry, and then crushing them like insects. Michael was the third, I whispered. My son was the third victim. And the biggest, said Frank. He pulled out another piece of paper. 3 months ago, Michael's life insurance policy at his company was updated, Margaret. I thought you were the beneficiary. But it's been changed. Sole beneficiary, Victoria Anderson. Amount, $5 million. My vision went dark. At that moment, I thought I was going to faint right there in the office. My son's signature. Probably signed on his sickbed, not even knowing what he was signing, perhaps just a signature on what was called company paperwork. This woman is a monster, Frank, I said. My tears had stopped flowing. My tear ducts had dried up. Only pure distilled rage remained. Yes, said Frank. He closed the file. And we're going to stop this monster. But we have to be careful. Margaret, this woman knows how to avoid giving statements to the police, how to avoid autopsies, how to cover her tracks. If you go home and yell at her now, Michael will be found dead tomorrow morning, and Victoria will already be on a plane to Brazil. What are we going to do? We're going to her lawyer, said Frank. Then to the district attorney. I have some old friends. When we put this file and your lab report on the table, there won't be anywhere left for Victoria to run. Frank and I went to the office of our family lawyer, Mr. Abernathy. Mr. Abernathy was surprised to see me. He was 80 years old and had even been my father's lawyer. Sitting behind that heavy mahogany desk in his leather chair, he listened to what we had to say. The fatherly expression on his face gave way to horror. God help us, said Mr. Abernathy, taking off his glasses and placing them on the desk. This is diabolical. We need to change the will, I said. If anything happens to Michael, I don't want that woman to get a penny. We'll take care of it right away, said Abernathy. But Margaret, the main thing is to save Michael. We have to go to the police. That afternoon, we were at the police station with the thick file Frank had prepared and the lab report. Frank used his old badge to get us past the young police officers and into the office of Detective Kowalski of the Homicide Division. Detective Kowalski was a man in his 40s with tired eyes, his desk piled high with files. He looked at us suspiciously at first. Mrs. Anderson, he said. These are usually family matters. Frank slammed the file down on the desk. This isn't a family matter, son. This is a serial killer file. Read it. Kowalski opened the file. He turned the pages reluctantly at first. Then he stopped. He read the lab report. Then the death report from Ohio. Then the insurance policies from Florida. When he looked up 10 minutes later, the weary expression was gone. There was a hunter's gleam in his eyes. Is this woman at your house right now? He asked. Yes, I said. She's looking after my son. We have to get her now. Kowalski said, standing up. No, I said. Everyone looked at me. If you go now, she'll deny it. She'll say, I didn't give him the pills, Michael took them himself. The deaths of my ex-husbands were tragic, she'll say. Her lawyers will get involved. I want you to catch her red-handed. Kowalski paused. What do you suggest, Mrs. Anderson? A camera, I said. I have a hidden camera in my room. She'll do it again tonight. I know. She changes the pills every night at 2 a.m. We'll watch her tonight. And the moment she tries to put that poison pill in Michael's mouth, that's when I want you to go in. Kowalski looked at Frank. Frank nodded slightly. It's risky, said the detective. Your son's life is at stake. My son is already dying, I said harshly. If we don't put this woman in jail, she'll find someone else. And kill them too. Tonight this ends. Kowalski took a deep breath. Okay, I'll get my team ready. We'll come in unmarked cars. We'll surround the house. The moment you give us the signal, we'll break down the door. It was dark when I left the police station. The streetlights were on. The noise of the city seemed far away. It was as if I were inside a bubble. The drive home was the hardest drive of my life. My hands no longer trembled on the steering wheel. The fear was gone. It had been replaced by an icy determination. When I entered the house, Victoria greeted me at the door. Margaret. I was so worried. Your phone was off, she said. That fake look of concern on her face. I looked at her. I really looked at her. I saw the rot beneath that pretty face, the teeth behind. That smile. My battery died, I said. Sorry, honey. I'm just tired. Michael asked about you, she said. Are you okay? You look pale. I'm fine, I said. I took a step toward her. I took her hand. I'm just getting old, Victoria. Sometimes it all feels too heavy. But thank God you're here. You take such good care of Michael. I saw a sparkle in her eyes. A sparkle of triumph. That greedy sparkle that thought I'd given up, that I'd soon die and leave all my wealth to her. I'm doing my best, Margaret, she said softly. I know, I said. I know. I went up to my room. I locked the door. I plugged my phone into charge and opened the hidden camera app. The image was clear. Michael was asleep. My innocent, defenseless lamb. I sat on my bed. The clock on the wall read 9 p.m. 5 hours. In 5 hours the devil's mask would fall. I took Harold's photo in my hand. I stroked the glass of the frame with my finger. Watch me, Harold, I whispered. Tonight is our night. Tonight I'll teach that woman she knocked on the wrong family's door. Outside the wind began to howl. The windows rattled. It was as if even nature sensed the approaching storm. I didn't close my eyes. I waited. I waited like a mother, a soldier, a sentry. When the sun rose tomorrow morning, this house would either be completely cleaned out, or I would have lost everything. But I knew one thing. Victoria Anderson would climb those stairs with her arrogant stride for the last time tonight. That night, the silence inside the house was like the calm before the storm. The walls held their breath, waiting for the approaching apocalypse. Detective Kowalski and his team had slipped quietly into the house from the backyard at 8:30 p.m. They weren't in uniform. They were dressed like gardeners or repairmen, but I could see the bulge of their guns under their jackets. We positioned them in the guest room, the kitchen pantry, and under the stairwell. My home, once that safe haven where my grandchildren played hide and seek, had now turned into a rat trap. But the hardest part was yet to come. Getting the police into the house was easy. The real challenge was breaking my son's heart. Michael was awake. He sat on his bed, trying to hold a glass of water with his trembling hands. His complexion was chalky. Seeing him like this, watching that strong man, who once carried me in his arms, turn into a wreck, it was the greatest torture a mother could endure. I entered the room and locked the door behind me. "Mom," Michael said, his voice cracked. "Why did you lock the door?" I sat down on the edge of his bed. I took the glass from his hand and placed it on the nightstand next to those damn poison bottles. I took his hands in mine. They were ice cold. "Michael," I said. I prayed my voice wouldn't tremble. "I want you to listen to me. And whatever I say, don't interrupt me." Michael frowned. "You're scaring me, Mom." "What's wrong? Did the doctor give you bad news? Do I have cancer?" My eyes filled with tears. I wished it was cancer. We could fight cancer. Cancer was an honest enemy. It wouldn't betray us. "No, son," I said. "Your illness isn't natural, Michael. Someone is doing this to you." Michael laughed. A weak, raspy laugh. "Mom, not again. Please don't start about Victoria. She does everything for me." I took a deep breath. I took my tablet out of my bag. I had prepared the video, just like that young boy named Jason had taught me in the store. "Just watch it, Michael," I said. "Please. For your mother's sake." I placed the tablet in his lap and pressed play. Michael looked at the screen with a bored expression at first. He saw the moment Victoria entered the room in the video. "Is this the night she brought my medicine?" he said impatiently. "Mom, what's so strange about this?" "Watch," I said. Then that moment came. The moment Victoria took that sealed bag out of her pocket. The moment she emptied the orange bottle and filled it with the pills she had brought. And that smile. That cold, calculating, triumphant smile. Watching the change in Michael's expression was like watching a car crash in slow motion. First confusion, then suspicion, then denial. What is this?" he whispered. "Is she switching my vitamins?" "Why? They're not vitamins, Michael," I said, placing the lab report in his lap. "I'm coming from Dr. Miller. Those pills are a mixture of thallium and antifreeze. Rat poison." The room fell deathly silent. Only Michael's rapid, wheezing breaths could be heard. He read the report. He read it again. His hands were shaking so much that the paper rustled. "No," he said. Tears began to roll down his cheeks. "No, it can't be. She loves me. We were going to have a baby. He told me I was the love of his life." "He's a widower, Michael," I said cruelly. I had to tell him the truth now. I had to rip off the bandage in one go. Twice widowed. Vanessa Thorne. Veronica Vance. 2 dead husbands. And millions of dollars in insurance money. "You're the third." Michael buried his head in his hands. His shoulders shook as he began to cry. That sound. It was the same sound he made when he cut his knee as a child. My heart broke. I hugged him. I laid his head on my chest. Just like old times. "I'm sorry," he sobbed. "I didn't listen to you, Mom. He drove you away from home and I let him. I'm sorry." "Shua," I said, stroking his hair. "It's over. I'm here. Your mother is here. And tonight this will end." There was a sound at the door downstairs. Victoria had come home. Michael's body tensed. He looked at me fearfully. "Don't be afraid," I said. I wiped his tears. "The police are downstairs. We just have to act normal." For the last time. As Victoria climbed the stairs, the sound of her high heels echoed through the house. Tap, tap, tap. Like the footsteps of an executioner. When she entered the room, she was holding that tray again. A glass of water and that orange pill bottle. That flawless, angelic mask on her face. "Hello, my love," she said cheerfully. I'm a little late today, the traffic was terrible. It's time for your medicine. She gave me a short, condescending look. Are you still here, Margaret? Michael needs to rest. I stood up. My legs were shaking, but I stood tall. We were just chatting, Victoria, I said. Victoria sat on the edge of the bed. She took the pill out of the bottle. That poisonous little tablet. Come on. Sweetie, she said, bringing the pill close to Michael's lips. Take this, then I'll give you a massage. I saw pure terror in Michael's eyes. His lips were locked. He was looking at Victoria. But now he was looking at a monster, not his wife. What's wrong, honey? Victoria asked, a hint of impatience in her voice. Open your mouth. Just then Detective Kowalski appeared in the doorway. Behind him were 2 more police officers. I don't think you should take that pill, Mrs. Anderson, Kowalski said. His voice was calm but authoritative. Victoria jumped up. The pill fell from her hand and rolled across the floor. She turned around. Seeing the police, her face turned pale. That beautiful, colorful face instantly turned into a gray mask. Who are you? What are you doing? In my house, she shouted. Her voice had become shrill. Detective Kowalski, he said, showing his badge. And this isn't your home. This is a crime scene. Victoria turned to me. The hatred in her eyes was so intense that for a moment I thought she could kill me with her gaze. You, she hissed. You old witch. What have you done? I saved my son, I said calmly. Kowalski gave the signal. Victoria Anderson, also known as Vanessa Thorne, also known as Veronica Vance. I'm arresting you for attempted murder, insurance fraud, and 2 past suspicious deaths. As a police officer cuffed Victoria's wrists, she was still screaming. You have no proof. This is a conspiracy. I love my husband. Michael. Say something to them. Michael sat up in bed. He gathered all his strength. We had that pill analyzed, Victoria, he said. His voice was weak, but his eyes were sharp. And we saw the camera. Victoria froze. The camera. Her eyes drifted to the digital clock on the nightstand. The moment she understood the truth, her shoulders slumped. The mask fell completely. She wasn't crying anymore. She wasn't screaming. She just stared at us with a cold, empty expression. I hate all of you, she said as the police led her out of the room. He was going to die anyway. I just sped up the process. When they took her away, the heavy air inside the house suddenly dissipated. It was as if the windows had been opened and fresh spring air had filled the room. I hugged Michael. We were both crying, but this time they were tears of joy. The following months were spent in hospital corridors and courtrooms. We admitted Michael to the hospital immediately. The doctor said that if we had waited another week, his kidneys would have completely failed. The thallium was flushed from his system. He went through a long, painful detox process. Some of his hair fell out, and the tremors in his hands lasted for weeks. But with each passing day, that gray color faded. The old sparkle returned to his eyes. The trial turned into a media circus. The newspapers dubbed her the Black Widow. The evidence Frank found, the video I took, the lab reports. It was a treasure trove for the prosecutor. Victoria was sentenced to life in prison, without parole. As she was led out of the courtroom, she looked at me. I didn't look at her. I stood tall with my rosary in my hand, my son, who was recovering by my side. And a day. Visual. A sunny veranda. Birds singing. Margaret and Michael sitting in rocking chairs, with iced tea in their hands. We are sitting on the veranda. The weather is warm. The magnolias in the garden are in bloom. Michael is beside me. He has gained weight. His cheeks are rosy. He has a glass of homemade iced tea in his hand. Mom, he said, breaking the silence. I turned to him. I've been thinking, he said, looking at the condensation on his glass. If you hadn't woken up that night, or if you hadn't taken that camera, or if you had just said, I'm old, I won't interfere. I reached out and held his hand. A mother never sleeps, Michael, I said. And a mother never grows old when her child is in danger. He smiled. That old warm smile. You're right, he said. Mothers know everything. I took a sip of my iced tea. It tasted sweet and refreshing. Like freedom. In my generation, we didn't give up. We fought for our family. Technology may change. The world may change, people may change. But a mother's love? That is the world's oldest, most powerful, and most dangerous weapon. And I don't regret using that weapon for a single moment. Author's note: CTA, if this story touched your heart, if you also believe that a mother's heart never fails, please leave a yes in the comments. And if there is a mother or grandmother in your life who needs to trust her instincts, share this story with them. You might save someone's life. Who knows? Stay loving and never stop listening to your inner voice.